Sorry, can I submit for the record my additional questions?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr.
Chair recognizes gentlelady from New York, Ms. Clark, for 4 minutes.
I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for coming before us, Mr. Zuckerman, today. I want to take the opportunity to represent the concerns of the newly formed Tech Accountability Caucus, in which I serve as a co-chair with my colleagues, Representative Robin Kelly, Congressman Emmanuel Cleaver, and Congresswoman Bonnie Watson-Coleman, but most importantly, people in our country and around the globe who are in vulnerable populations, including those who look just like me. My first question to you is, as you may be aware, there have been numerous media reports about how more than 3,000 Russian ads were bought on Facebook to incite racial and religious division and chaos in the U.S. during the 2016 election. Those ads specifically characterized and weaponized African-American groups like Black Lives Matter, in which ads suggested through propaganda or fake news, as people call it these days, that they were a rising threat. Do you think that the lack of diversity, culturally competent personnel in your C-suite and throughout your organization, in which your company did not detect or disrupt and investigate these claims, are a problem in this regard?
Congresswoman, I agree that we need to work on diversity. In this specific case, I don't think that that was the issue, because we were frankly slow to identifying the whole Russian misinformation operation and not just that specific example. Going forward, we're going to address this by verifying the identity of every single advertiser who's running political or issue-oriented ads, to make it so that foreign actors or people trying to spoof their identity or say that they're someone that they're not cannot run political ads or run large pages of the type.
So whether they were Russian or not, when you have propaganda, how are you addressing that? Because this was extremely harmful during the last election cycle, and can continue to be so in the upcoming elections and throughout the year, right? I'm concerned that there are not eyes that are culturally competent looking at these things and being able to see how this would impact on civil society. If everyone within the organization is monolithic, then you can miss these things very easily. And we've talked about diversity forever with your organization. What can you say today when you look at how all of this operates that you can do immediately to make sure that we have the types of viewing or reviewing that could enable us to catch this in its tracks?
Congresswoman, we announced a change in how we're going to review ads and big pages, so that now, going forward, we're going to verify the identity and location of every advertiser who's running political or issue ads, or and the identities.
Good. We'd like you to get back to us with a timeline on that.
No, that will be in place for these elections.
Okay, fabulous. When Mr. Kogan sold the Facebook-based data that he acquired through the Quiz app to Cambridge Analytica, did he violate Facebook's policies at the time?
Yes, Congresswoman.
When the Obama campaign collected millions of Facebook users' data through their own app during the 2012 election, did it violate Facebook's policies at the time?
No, Congresswoman, it did not.
I hope you understand that this distinction provides little comfort to those of us concerned about our privacy online. Regardless of political party, Americans desperately need to be protected. Democrats on this committee have been calling for strong privacy and data security legislation for years. We really can't wait, Mr. Chair.
Gentlelady's time's expired. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Zuckerberg, thanks for joining us today. Let me add my name to the list of folks that you're going to get back to on the rural broadband internet access question. Please add my name to that list.
Of course.
I got a lot of those folks in my district. You know, you're a real American success story. There's no question that you and Facebook have revolutionized the way Americans, in fact, the world, communicate and interconnect with one another. I think one of the reasons that you were able to do that is because nowhere other than here in America, where a young man in college can pursue his dreams and ambitions on his own terms without a big federal government over-regulating them and telling them what they can and cannot do, could you have achieved something like this. But in the absence of federal regulations that would reel that in, the only way it works for the betterment of society and people is with a high degree of responsibility and trust. And you've acknowledged that there have been some breakdowns in responsibility. I think sometimes, and I'm a technology guy. I have 2 degrees in computer science. I'm a software engineer. I'm a patent holder. So I know the challenges that you face in terms of managing the technology. But oftentimes technology folks spend so much time thinking about what they can do and little time thinking about what they should do. And so I want to talk about some of those should do kind of things. You heard earlier about faith-based material that had been taken down, ads that had been taken down. You admitted that it was a mistake. That was in my district, by the way, Franciscan University. A faith-based university was the one that did that. How is your content filtered and determined to be appropriate or not appropriate and policy compliant? Is it an algorithm that does it, or is there a team of a gazillion people that sit there and look at each and every ad that make that determination?
Congressman, it's a combination of both. So at the end of the day, we have community standards that are written out and try to be very clear about what is acceptable. And we have a large team of people. As I said, by the end of this year, we're going to have about more than 20,000 people working on security and content review across the company. But in order to flag some content quickly, we also build technical systems in order to take things down. So if we see terrorist content, for example, we'll flag that and we can take that down.
What do you do when you find someone or something that's made a mistake? I mean, I've heard you say several times today that you know a mistake has been made. What kind of accountability is there when mistakes are made? Because every time a mistake like that is made, it's a little bit of a chip away from the trust and the responsibility factors. How do you hold people accountable in Facebook when they make those kind of mistakes of taking stuff down that shouldn't be taken down or leaving stuff up that should not be left up?
Congressman, for content reviewers specifically, their performance is going to be measured by whether they do their job accurately. And
you ever fire anybody when they do stuff like that?
I'm sure we do. As part of the normal course of running a company, you're hiring and firing people all the time to grow your capacity and
what happened to the person that took down the Franciscan University ad and didn't put it back up until the media started getting involved?
Congressman, I'm not specifically aware of that case.
Can you take that question for me? My time has expired. Can you take that question for me and get me that answer back, please?
We will.
Okay, thank you very much. I yield back.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Iowa, Mr. Loebsack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you and the ranking member for holding this hearing today, and I want to thank Mr. Zuckerberg for being here today as well. Add my name to the rural broadband list as well. I have 1/4 of Iowa, the southeast part of Iowa. We definitely need more help on that front. Thank you. You may recall last year, Mr. Zuckerberg, that you set out to visit every state in the country to meet different people. And one of those places you visited was, in fact, Iowa, my home state of Iowa. And you did visit the district that I proudly represent, and you met some of my constituents. As you began your tour, you said that you believed in connecting the world and giving everyone a voice, and that, quote, you wanted, quote, to personally hear more of those voices. I'm going to do the same thing in just a second that a number of my colleagues did and just ask you some questions that were submitted to my Facebook page by some of my constituents. I do want to say at the outset, though, and I do ask for unanimous consent to enter all those questions into the record, Mr. Chair.
Without objection.
I think trust has been the issue today. There's no question about it. I think that's what I'm hearing from my constituents. That's what we're hearing from our colleagues. That's really the question. How can we be guaranteed that, for example, when you agree to some things today, that you're going to follow through and that we're going to be able to hold you accountable, and without perhaps constructing too many rules and regulations. We'd like to keep that to a minimum if we possibly can, but I do understand that you have agreed that we're going to have some rules and regulations so that we can protect people's privacy, so that we can protect that use of the consumer data. So going forward from there, I've just got a few questions I'll probably have an opportunity to get to. The first one goes to the business model issue, because you're publicly traded, is that correct?
Yes.
And you're the CEO?
Yes.
Right. And so I've got Lauren from Solon who asks, is it possible for Facebook to exist without collecting and selling our data? Is it possible to exist?
Congressman, we don't sell people's data. So I think that that's an important thing to clarify up front. And then in terms of collecting data, I mean, the whole purpose of the service is that you can share the things that you want with the people around you, right, and your friends. So
is it possible for you to be in business without sharing the data, because that's what you have done, whether it was selling or not, sharing the data, providing it to Cambridge Analytica and other folks along the way? Is it possible for your business to exist without doing that?
Well, Congressman, it would be possible for our business to exist without having a developer platform. It would not be possible for our business to, or our products or our services or anything that we do to exist without having the opportunity for people to go to Facebook, put in the content that they want to share and who they want to share it with, and then go do that. That's the core thing.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And then Brenda from Muscatine, she has a question obviously related to trust as well, and that is, how will changes promised this time be proven to be completed? She'd like to know, how's that going to happen? If there are changes, you said there have been some changes, how can she and those folks in our districts and throughout America, not just members of Congress, but how can folks in our districts hold you accountable? How do they know that those changes are in fact going to happen? That's what that question's about.
Congressman, for the developer platform changes that we announced, they're implemented. We're putting those into place. We announced a bunch of specific things. It's on our blog, and I wrote it in my written testimony, and that stuff is happening. We're also going back and investigating every single app that had access to a large amount of data before we locked down the platform in the past. We will tell people if we find anything that misused their data, and we will tell people when the investigation is complete.
Thank you. And finally, Chad from Scott County wants to know, who has my data other than Cambridge Analytica?
Congressman, part of what I just said is that we're going to do an investigation of every single app that had access to a large amount of people's data. If you signed into another app, then that app probably has access to some of your data. And part of the investigation that we're going to do is to determine whether those app developers did anything improper, shared that data further beyond that. And if we find anything like that, we will tell people that their data was misused.
All right,
Gentleman's
thank you,
time's
Mr. Zuckerberg.
expired.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Long, for 4 minutes.